sword fighting, I found like they used to run obby games as well, and you'd get like VIP within them if you joined the clan. I think that's how like a lot of people got started back in kind of that era, like the 2010 through like 2015 era. I'd say that's like the majority of how people got into sword fighting. This was around like 2012 at the time. And yeah, I think I just joined VIP off of them, started doing group stuff with them. I started with swords early on, then I moved over to guns, and then in 2015 I came back to swords full time. I've been doing that ever since. Rivalries? Most it depended. Like back in the early days, I feel like there was a lot more competition between clans. Usually it would be like, honestly, usually it was like the first group of people who took it seriously. They all made their own clans, and because of that, some of them split off from other ones, so they had some resentment, obviously, for being in the old clans. They didn't like them anymore. There's a lot of stuff like that. It's a very like personal, petty stuff most of the time. If it is a rivalry, I think nowadays there really is that anymore. There is in some clans, but like that's definitely you see more with like clans that are run by like younger kids and stuff. Clans that are older are a lot more put together and kind of serious, and we just want a sword fight. Yeah, it depended on the clan, but for sure, I was in some clans that were like top clans at the time. Um, it's it's like it's very hard because like back then, pretty much any clan that was existing was like big. Like now they're a lot smaller, and they they're not as active as they used to be and stuff like that. So like that like the olden days big is a lot bigger than like today's big, if you know what I'm talking about. Like the biggest are like normal clans around now can rally is like equivalent to like what was on the low end for some of these clans, you know, back in the day. So you got to like take a matter in perspective. Like even some of these like lesser quote unquote clans that weren't like maybe the number one, two, or three, they were still pulling way more than you know the number one you'll see today, and that's just how it is. But yeah, I think anyone who's been around that long at this point has been through like either one or multiple eras with clans that were really good at the time. Oh yeah, for sure. Cobalt Nation, like considered one of the top 10 sword clans of all time, even to this day. They had the tightest community I'd ever seen. They had like over like 200 plus different uniforms. Like they were very crazy in their development and like with how much they could achieve, and also having like a very close like almost like friend group in the server that was like pretty big, like rallying like 50, 60 people that were like active every single day, and all of them are like very active in the Discord. We did a lot of like community stuff. We did like a newspaper with Cobalt Nation for a while. We did multiple house cups year after year. Like a ranked prestige system for members who had gone past their initial like reached the end of the rankings and wanted to restart, and they would get a prestige and work towards it. Custom jackets for all of their members. That it was like 50 Robux, and the leader of the clan would make a custom jacket for you for literally every single person who asked, even like someone who had just joined the clan. So it was pretty cool. Yeah, stuff like that. They are asking like that's definitely like my personal pick of like what is my favorite clan. That's like something dear to me. If you're asking me like who I think is the number one clan of all time, it's Skilled Force without a doubt. The fact that they were able to dominate as long as they did, and have such a like such a top placements for years along end in probably what's considered the hardest era to be number one in, because it was the time everyone was rallying the most. It was the biggest clan he had ever been. Um, so even though like there's been like Dragonborn held the title for longer, but they did it in like an era where it was like recent, so I don't really consider that as like good. No offense to them. It's a lot. It was a They couldn't compete when it was much more competitive. But that's like I think if you ask Clanders, it's a fucking LeBron versus Jordan debate. So of which of those two are better, and I think it really just comes out around to like what generation you started sword fighting in. Yeah, I have been a clan leader a few times. I'll be honest, I don't really enjoy it. It's I prefer to be like high com and just doing everything I want to do. What you'll see a lot of the times is like if there's a decision that the leader doesn't necessarily want to make, they usually have the high com do it, and I'd rather be in that position than having to be like a perfect leader, because that's kind of like what a lot of leaders focus on. Um, the hardest thing, I wouldn't say managing troops, honestly. Easy. That's the easy part. Is doing that kind of stuff. The hard part is like getting people to stay, and like keeping clanning engaging for them like over and over and stuff like that. It's very hard to achieve something like that. But a few do. Yeah, all the time. And I've quit multiple times for like months on end. I always come back, but yeah, for sure. And a lot of that I think is people who try to concern themselves with like everything, every aspect of the community, instead of like people who are super active in like clanware or were active in like the SEC back in the day, or were active on like CNG back in the day. They got very like worked up in it, um, and I think that can lead to some of them wanting to quit, especially like if they get like a devastating loss, or if the clan is falling apart and there's nothing they can do. But I think if that's the case, if you're ever in that situation, you you can kind of just, if it's not really working in that group, you can always move on to another if you want to keep clanning and not have the drama. I think if you find a community that's less cares a little bit less about that, you'll find you enjoy it more. At least that's how most of the older people who are still playing. That's how they feel it, at least. I think it's. I think it's if you take like a chart, I think it's pretty bad. If you're comparing it to like the other stuff, I don't think it's. I think every clanner, as they start to like get tired with the game, they always say clanning's not gonna last much longer. But like, I'll be honest, people were saying that even on like 2012. So, and it hasn't it hasn't stopped yet. So, I kind of doubt it's going to anytime soon. But things could be better. I think a lot of people. I think Clanor does some good stuff, but I think they have a lot of issues, and I think they need to fix some of them. But I don't think they're not, I don't think they're the evil that some people do in clanning either. I think they do some good work. But I feel like if you're in their position, like trying to manage like entire community, it's very hard to do it, especially because there's not a lot of power they can actually enforce at the end of the day. I think that's what it comes down to. But they try at least. They're better than the SEC was, at least when the SEC was in its later years. So I think that's why no one's going back there either. Um, so yeah, that's about it. Yeah, of course, and I think that's why, like, if you're trying to find a new clan, you have to experiment. I wouldn't set your hearts on the first one you find. Sometimes it takes like a few. There's definitely been some clans like I didn't love, and I tried and I gave it a shot. Maybe played there for a few months, but after a bit I ended up leaving. And usually if it's a clan I actually like, I'll end up becoming HR in it. That's usually the sign. But because that's usually the ones I'll invest more of my time into. Trainings. I think when we were all younger, clanning was a lot more strict, and they made you do like they enforced grammar a lot. They enforced like hell jacks and shit like that. Nowadays, I don't. If oh crap, my sorry, my Roblox is warning me. that I can't swear on here. Um, I think that what was what was the question again? I have to fucking think. I'm very high right now. Um, I think like nowadays trainings are, at least in most of the community, more about like being fun events than like teaching people how to sword fight. Um, but back in the day, it definitely like it used to be kind of insane what they would force us to do, and I think it was like to make it was just because it was kids running it, so they wanted to like enforce more power as like adult people got older and like more older people started playing Roblox, and a lot of the people who continued clanning stuck around. It's become a lot more laid back because like newer people can't really stand trainings. Like it's very hard for them if there's even a pause. They just I think it's because they have short attention spans. But if they're not actively sword fighting it all given times when they're on Roblox, they don't care. Why did Gustavo join?
Oh my god.
Back in the day, yeah, but once I got into clans, that